Good morning, Amanda with a Happy Homestead here. I say good morning because it is only 8:15 in the morning. And I got some things to do today, specifically something this morning that I wanted to share with you. Before I get into all of that, it is the middle of July. We are in the throes of the garden producing, things needing to be done outside. The kids are home from school. They're upstairs playing, and hopefully it stays that way for right now. My husband is off at a work event for a couple of nights, so I am holding down the fort with the children, the house, the garden, and my job. So I wanted to do this before I start my day, and that is that we are going to be making a vegetable soup. Now, you're probably thinking, really? That doesn't sound good. Because I don't know, maybe I would think that too if I were watching this. But hold on, don't leave yet. It is so good. So we are making this vegetable soup. It is on page 402 of the Ball Complete Book of Home Preserving. And this is a pressure canning recipe. This is a low acid recipe that is used only with a pressure canner, not a pressure cooker like the Instant Pot. You cannot and should not can in your Instant Pot. This is a pressure canning recipe. Now, if you don't have a pressure canner, you're just not there yet in your journey, you don't want to do it, that's okay too. You can still make this recipe and freeze it, and you don't even have to freeze it in the glass mason jars, right? You can freeze it in any kind of container that you want. So what's so great about this recipe? I wish I could tell you. It's just delicious. I made this for the first time last summer, and we ate through it through the winter. I ate most of it, I think. Like during my workday, just for lunch, I'd pop open a jar and heat it up with a little Parmesan cheese and a little salt, and it was so good. Maybe with some homemade sourdough. It was just the perfect winter warming meal. One of the other reasons that I'm really excited to do this today and that I love this recipe is that it actually helps clean out some things from our refrigerator and our freezer and makes it more shelf stable in that soup form. So I'm going to go through all the ingredients that I have here, but basically it is tomatoes, corn, green beans. I'm using green beans. The recipe says lima beans. I prefer green beans. Carrots, celery, onions, and then I've got some chicken stock that I'm thawing. So I knew I was going to do this last night, before this morning, and so I took a bunch of things out of the freezer. So this recipe makes 7 quarts, and that's important to note because most pressure canners, larger pressure canners, can hold up to 7 quarts. Now I have the All-American 921. It's a 21 quart capacity, but don't get thrown by that. That means it's a 21 quart capacity if you were using it just as a big pot to make a big soup something, right? 21 quarts. For canning, 7 quarts is your max, or 19 pints. And I'm going to be doing 7 quarts today so I can fill up my canner. So I've got some chicken stock that I had made months ago, and I took it out of the freezer last night. The recipe calls for water to be added. I am going to just change that up a bit and make it even more nutritious and more flavorful by using some chicken stock. I've got homegrown onions, potatoes. These potatoes are not homegrown, but they've been in the fridge. This is from our last Azure order, which may have been March or April, and they're starting to sprout a bit. This one, I just need to cut that bad part off, but we're gonna get these out of the fridge. I've got carrots, and then I took out 4 cups of frozen corn and 4 cups of frozen green beans that we're gonna be adding to our soup. I was thirsty. Okay, and then the other part of the base, right? Chicken stock is the base, but the other part is tomatoes. I don't have any home canned crushed tomatoes right now. I already used them over the winter. That's okay. Don't get hung up on having to do these recipes with all homegrown or home done things. It doesn't have to be that way. You can find these ingredients on sale at the store and make this your own and make a really healthy, economical meal for yourself to enjoy later on. So don't get hung up on it having to be homegrown or homemade. With that said, I am using organic crushed tomatoes from Azure Standard. If you're unfamiliar with Azure Standard, click above and check out all of my Azure Standard hauls. We order a few times a year. They're big orders and they really keep us from going to the grocery store on a weekly or even bi-weekly basis. So these are organic crushed tomatoes. I have 2 of these 28-ounce cans, and then I have one 14.5-ounce can of just organic diced tomatoes. It doesn't really matter if you want to use crushed or diced, totally your preference. So the summer garden is coming in like crazy, right? And I have a lot of tomatoes here, but these are destined for something different. Not for soup today. So again, you don't have to go buy fresh tomatoes and peel them and core them and chop them. Path of least resistance sometimes is the best. So this is going to take a little time this morning to put together. Not a lot of time and not hard work, right? It's really just peeling and chopping and putting everything in a pot. So you do need a big pot. Really what we're doing is combining everything, heating it through a bit, getting it nice and warm, probably just below a boiling point, and then we're going to get it in our jars and in our canner, and it's going to pressure can at the quart level for 10 pounds of pressure at 90 minutes. So I've got my big stock pan. I'm literally just going to start throwing things in. I'm going to start with the easy things, right? The chicken stock, the tomatoes, the green beans, and the corn. And then I just have to chop the celery, chop the onion, and peel and chop the carrots and potatoes. Now, safety note here, really important. If you're not canning this, if you're just freezing this, you don't have to do this part. You don't have to peel if you don't want to, your carrots and potatoes. If you're canning it, you do. You want to eliminate as much possibility and as much chances for any type of bacteria or germs to remain and thrive and flourish in that quart jar when it's sitting on your shelf. And so we always peel and wash our vegetables. Before I get started with chopping everything, if you're freezing this, do not get hung up on the ratios within the recipe. It won't necessarily matter, right? Because you're not putting it through that pressure canning process. But because I am following the recipe. It is a tried and tested recipe for safety and efficacy. And so I am using, just for reference here, 8 cups of chopped cored peeled tomatoes, 6 cups chopped peeled potatoes, 6 cups thinly sliced peeled carrots, 4 cups green beans, 4 cups corn kernels, 2 cups sliced celery, 2 cups chopped onions, 6 cups water, but I'm using chicken stock, and then just salt and black pepper. That is all that is in this. And again, you can use lima beans. I am changing it over and using green beans instead.
You gave me that. No, let me just see. Let me do this. And what this covers is like a baby pool or something.
Okay, so everything is chopped, and in here I added salt, pepper, and I actually added just a little oregano as well. I want you to notice that, you know, I chopped things pretty big pieces. They're still bite-sized, but it's important that you don't chop everything really small and really tiny, because through the pressure canning process, right, you're pressure canning for 90 minutes. Through that process, everything basically cooks. And you do not want to open your soup 6 months from now and have it be all mush. And so that is why you do things in, you know, still bite-sized, but larger pieces. So I'm just mixing this up, and I'm gonna get this on the stove and get it nicely warmed through. And in the meantime, I'm gonna heat my canner up with my jars in it so everything is close to the same temperature and we don't have any thermal shock with glass breaking. I am still trying to recover from cutting those onions. They were so strong. So I've got my jars in the canner, my 7-quart jars, just everything kind of warming up with some water. I've got my stock pot with all of the soup starting to get warmed through as well. So I'm gonna go through the canning process. Again, if this is new to you, click above for the canning series. I have a whole series, not just on recipes with canning, but how to, right? The science behind it. I think there's 4 videos with an intro, and then water bath canning, steam canning, and then pressure canning. So walk through those, take some time to look through them, watch them, and learn, right? Get some of those ball preserving books and learn as much as you can. With that said, I'm not going to go through each of those mechanics today on this video, right? Because you can refer back to them on those previous videos. But what I am going to do today is get everything heated up, load my jars up, put the rings and the lids on, put them back in the canner, seal it up, and I'm going to bring it up to the highest temperature, basically high on my stovetop, and get everything boiling. And eventually, this is the lid here, steam is going to start coming out of this valve, and I want to have a steady stream of steam come out for 10 minutes straight. So when it first starts coming out, it kind of putters a bit, and then eventually it is a steady stream. At that point, you want to count the 10-minute timer down, and what's happening is expelling all of the extra air out of the canner, and you want that. You don't want any air pockets anywhere. So you want all of that air expressed out, and then once that 10-minute timer is up, I'm gonna put my weighted gauge on. Again, this is an All-American 921. So this is a pressure canner that has the dial to show you, when you get up to pressure, but it has basically this metal disc. Depending upon your altitude, 5, 10, or 15 pounds, you put the weighted gauge on. I'm at 10 pounds for altitude, so that after that 10 minutes of steam, I'm gonna put that on. And then pressure is going to start building up in the canner. And once it gets to it actually goes to it hovers between 11 and 12 pounds of pressure. Once the dial goes up there, this is gonna start rattling. Just like that, and you'll hear steam coming out. And that means you are at the proper pressure, and you begin your countdown for the actual processing time, which in this case is 90 minutes. I believe it's 75 minutes for pints and 90 minutes for quarts, again at 10 pounds of pressure, and adjust accordingly for your own altitude. So that is when I'll begin that 90-minute countdown and go from there. So I'm not gonna show you all of those mechanics. I'm just gonna go about it because it's gonna take a couple of hours, right? 90-minute processing time, but also some time to get up to pressure. And then afterwards, I move the canner off of the burner. I just move it to the other side, turn the burner off, move it to the other side, and leave it. Do not take this off. Do not attempt to unlock the lid and take the lid off. That's when the accidents happen. You need to let that pressure come back down naturally, and it will take at least 30 to 45 minutes. Once everything is down, again, go through the video, go through the steps for proper instructions. Then everything kind of gets disassembled and taped off. So it's gonna take a couple of hours. So I'm gonna go through this, sit back and relax. It'll just be a mere moment of seconds for you, and I'll show you once these are all done. And the process is done. There are my beautiful 7 quarts. They're actually still boiling inside. The contents are still boiling and bubbling. They are very hot. So I'm gonna leave them sit here for a full 24 hours, not touch them, and I'm gonna take the rings off tomorrow afternoon. So it is 1:30 in the afternoon. So you can see this is a process. It does not require a lot of hands-on time, right, when you're pressure canning, but you do need to be home, you need to watch things, but you don't have to stand there and watch the pressure canner the whole time. So just know that if you're doing pressure canning or getting into it, you want to do it on days where you know you're home. And so I'll take those rings off in 24 hours. I'm gonna wash the jars. I do think there was a little siphoning over the last 30 minutes or so. And siphoning is when some of the contents kind of come out a little bit before it actually seals. It just has to do with temperature change and whatnot and pressure. And so it's perfectly normal. You just want to keep your siphoning to a minimum. So I'm going to wash my jars tomorrow before I actually put them for long-term storage on our shelf. But 7 quarts of homemade vegetable soup is done. We've cleaned out some of the things from the freezer and we've made things shelf stable to be used later on this winter. Thanks for joining me on this vegetable soup journey. I'm trying to just take you along on things that we're doing. Hopefully you find value in that. Stay healthy, stay well. Bye-bye.